This year, traffic cops will give tickets to 1 out of every 8 drivers. Of those motorists who contest their tickets in court, more than 25% will win their cases. You too can beat a speeding ticket, and we're going to show you how. We've gotten the inside scoop from current and former cops, presiding judges, and high-priced lawyers. Advice that would cost you thousands of dollars if you went out and paid for it yourself. You'll see actual traffic stops and court cases demonstrating the do's and don'ts of beating your ticket. The only surefire way to beat a ticket is to avoid getting it in the first place. But once you've been pulled over, the best chance you'll ever have is to talk your way out of it right then and there.
Okay, let's say you're driving down the road and suddenly you see the red light in your rearview mirror. Now, it's important to realize that the moment the officer places that light upon your vehicle, by law, you are under arrest.
Well, I don't think I've paid any tickets except for one in the last, I don't know, 20 years or so. It's been a long time since I paid a ticket. I have been stopped probably an average of once a year or so, I would think, maybe a little more frequently than that. I have been able to talk my way out of it most of the time.
An officer, when making a stop, has the discretion of 3 possible routes of action. Number 1 is the taking into custody of the actual physical incarceration of an individual. Number 2 is the issuance of a warning. And number 3 is the issuance of a citation, or what is commonly known as a ticket.
Assume I have stopped and another police officer is approaching me. I think that many police officers are real gun-shy today because they don't know what that person who they stopped is likely to do. So I'm thinking I don't want to make him feel like I am a threat to his security.
It's very important that you keep your hands visible at all times. You may be innocently reaching into a glove box or reaching under a seat for your wallet or your registration. The officer has no idea what you're reaching for. In the back of his mind are the facts. In 1985, for example, 20% of the officers who died in the line of duty lost their lives on traffic stops.
I just sit still with my hands on my steering wheel and I watch the rearview mirror as he's approaching me and I wait for him to come up to my car.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
The chances are pretty good he's going to say something to me, and I listen to what he has to say. I want to be sure that I respond to his question. I don't want him to think I'm a smart aleck or I'm going to be evasive or in any way uncooperative. His first question is probably going to be, may I please see your driver's license? I will carefully take my wallet, it might be in my pocket, it might be in my console of my car, somewhere like that. I'm going to reach and carefully, so he can see me, take my wallet out and remove my driver's license from the wallet and hand it to the officer. Up until this point, I don't think you should say anything to him because you can't always be sure what he's stopping you for. I don't think it's a good idea to begin by trying to talk him out of something that he hasn't said you did yet. So just wait.
The amount of stops we make during an average day is 25 stops. So we'll stop 25 vehicles. Out of that, 7 to 8 are issued a citation. That means approximately 17 people will get off with a warning. Now, what's the criteria for a warning? That's one of the major secrets. If you knew what the criteria for a warning is, you wouldn't be getting a citation. It'll cover you about 80% of the time if you know how to talk your way out of a citation.
What I'm trying to do is give the officer an alternative to giving me a ticket. So I am giving him an opportunity to give me a lecture, if that's what he would like to do, instead of giving me a ticket. And I'm not going to give him that opportunity unless I carry on a dialogue with him. So I try to give him the opportunity to find something to talk to me about other than just walking away and writing a ticket to me. And I think that if he's treated nicely and you encourage him to talk to you, a lot of officers are willing to do that. I think they're not going to do that if you insult them in any way. They just want to get away from you and give you a ticket and be done with you.
Many times we think that a police officer or a highway patrolman is like big, strong daddy, and we become very childlike in our reactions. Very fearful or perhaps rebellious, if that's our style. I think the important thing to remember is this is a human being standing there. Without his uniform, he's perhaps married, he has kids, he's afraid of his superiors, he doesn't want to look bad or feel like he's making mistakes. He's just a human being doing his job. And just like all of us, he has his own set of fears, his own set of insecurities. No one likes to tell other people that they're in trouble. He probably doesn't enjoy having people become hostile to him, having people get angry at him. He doesn't enjoy ruining people's days. And so I think having some kind of compassion, understanding, and imagining how it must feel to have to stop someone, pull them over, and not know what's going to happen. They could pull out a gun. They could start telling you off. It doesn't feel good, even though he's doing his job. And truly, he doesn't want to give people tickets. He wants to keep the highway safe.
You approach the car, you say, "Good evening, good afternoon, ma'am. Do you have a driver's license, registration?" She says yes. She hands it to you. She says, "What'd I do wrong, officer?" You say, "Well, I clocked you 64 in a 25-mile-an-hour zone." I wasn't speeding. You must be mistaken. Either she'll say, "My car can't do that, won't go that fast," her new Corvette, or she'll say, "I was watching the speedometer and I was doing 27 miles an hour." So she's saying one of two things, and that's either I'm a liar or I'm grossly incompetent. I don't like either one of those. So I'm going to have to make her wrong, and she's going to get issued the citation.
In your mind, taking his uniform off, imagining him in swimming trunks, or in a t-shirt, or in jeans, visually, just imagining that he's standing there, putting a funny hat on him, imagining him holding a baby, will soften your tone and the way you look at him. Perhaps it will open him up a little bit more emotionally, so he has the time to really listen to you, and listen to you as a human being and not just as a machine.
I answer his questions directly, although I'm sure that some lawyers might disagree with me on this. I think that if you're honest with a police officer and not only show respect but also honesty, that's a refreshing change to them, and that they would be more likely to believe in your sincerity of either that you believe that you were not doing anything improper, or that even if you were, you won't do it again if you're honest with them in the first instance. If you start right off by attacking your own credibility or his, I don't think he's going to believe anything that you say from that point forward.
You'll get the vehicle stopped and they'll sit there and argue with you, and then they'll start pleading. They'll say, "Please, I can't get a citation. Please, I can't." Well, that's the wrong thing to do. There's no mercy as far as motor officers are concerned about pleading. It's the wrong thing. You just don't plead. The girls that are crying, it doesn't influence us one way or the other. The thing that will influence a motor officer is forthright admission that I screwed up. Plain and simple, I screwed up.
Typically, the officer will he'll pull a person over on a speeding ticket or some type of violation, and right about the time that he's asking for the individual's driver's license, he will confront him with what he saw, such as, "Traveling a little fast, weren't you?" Or "Blew that stop sign back there, didn't you?" But when the officer says that you were traveling a little fast, weren't you, he's already starting to build his case. Because whatever you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Typical response was, "Yeah, officer, I might have been going a little bit fast." Well, that's an admission. And you're going to get that thrown in your face in court.
Say, "Officer, I want to apologize. Let me take this opportunity to apologize for going through those stop signs. I'm in a hurry today, and I should have known the efficiency of LAPD that I would be getting stopped. I haven't been stopped in quite a while, and I understand you have to issue my citation, and I just want to apologize for taking your time out of the day to do this for a jerk stunt like that. I know you have better things to do."
I think the more appropriate way to commence the transaction, when the officer says, "Well, sir, you were traveling a little fast." Was I? How fast was I going, officer? Did you clock me at that speed? How long of a, was it a temporary thing? How long a clock did you have on me? Where was I when you first observed me? That information can be very, very helpful. Write it down. You don't have to take the officer on. You don't have to kiss his ass either. just deal with him in a professional way. And you're not eliminating all possible chance of still being let off with just a warning. You're into a conversation with the officer, and a conversation that's not an admission of guilt, a conversation that's not an attack on his professionalism or ability to do his job. You're into a conversation where there's still room to negotiate. And I would suggest that that is much more appropriate than either. You only have so many alternatives, and you either can admit it, you can deny it, or you can talk about it.
No two states or even communities are exactly alike in the way they handle traffic violations. Some haul you right off to jail. Others let you get out of it by going to traffic school. But most issue you a citation that is actually a notice to appear in court. At that point, you're faced with basically two options: pay up or fight. You'll need to investigate the procedures in your own community. But no matter where you are, when you decide to contest your ticket, you should remember the 3 Ps: preparation, preparation, and preparation. Because no matter how you cut it, you're an amateur in a professional system. And the professionals will know what they're doing, even if you don't.
More than half the people, if just allowed to state their part of the case, no leading questions or anything, just what happened on July 1st, 1986, when you were pulled over by Officer John Doe. What they say will result in proof beyond a reasonable doubt that they are guilty of the charge. Frequently, people will defend a speeding charge by coming in and saying that they were driving less than the ticket, but more than 55. It results in it's the same result. Makes it real easy for the judge. He doesn't have to make an evaluation of credibility. You make it very easy for the person trying the ticket when he does not have to make a credibility call. He doesn't have to say, I believe the police officer more than you, or I believe you more than the police officer. All he has to do is explain to the individual, well, I believe everybody is telling the truth here, but based upon what you said, you're in violation of the law. They'll go to court. They won't have read the code section for which they're cited. You know, there's the code section for the reason why they're stopped is written on the ticket. They'll walk into court, in a court of law, attempting to contest this citation. They won't know what the code section says. That's lack of preparation.
If you don't know what it is that you're accused of having done, you're likely to miss the whole point when you get to the place where your guilt or innocence is going to be determined. So you need to know for sure what it is that you've been accused of having done. Most of the time, it's not going to be that hard to know. Speeding is easy. Speeding is speeding. Or a traffic stop, whether you've gone through a boulevard stop or a red light. But there are lots of traffic violations where it isn't that clear from the discussion, or might not be that clear from the discussion you had with the officer, just exactly what you didn't do or did do. So it's important to find out what that particular code section says that you did. Sometimes, in fact, the police officer may make a mistake and write down the wrong code section. And if that's the case, when you get to trial, when he testifies you did X, and in fact you did Y, that kind of thing is the best of all worlds, because it's going to be obvious that the police officer has made an error.
I've made mistakes. Officers out there make mistakes. You go back immediately to the intersection and start looking at the intersection. You look at the lights. All of a sudden you find out that the top signal light's not working. There's something wrong with it. But the other 2 lights are working. Well, that doesn't alleviate you from your responsibility to stop for a red light, but it might tell you that there's something wrong with that traffic light there. If there's something wrong with the top one, possibly the others turn green, turn red, which I've seen happen. All of a sudden you'll be sitting in an intersection, look up, and the lights have changed on you for no apparent reason. They're old traffic boxes. They're in error too. They're mechanical. You notify the traffic department, find out, when was the last time these traffic lights were repaired? That morning? Something was wrong with them? They've had a history of that intersection having problems with the lights. These are all things that are going to bring credibility in court to you when you get in front of the judge. You've researched this. All these judges want to see is they've got 40 people in there to handle. They want to get them out, expedite these court cases so they can get off work. They're just like anybody else. Judges are just like anybody else. And they want to have these citizens found innocent if they're innocent, or they believe that they're innocent.
What this all comes down to is that the individual fighting his own traffic ticket must be prepared. As a part of the preparation, more than one person have heard me say that it is malpractice for an attorney not to inspect the scene of the crime when he goes to try a case, whether it's a murder case, whether it's a drunk driving case. Of the driving under the influence cases I win, at least 50% of them are won on geographical or mathematical facts. I go to the scene. I correspond the police report with what the scene appears to look like. Is there 1 lane, 2 lanes, 3 lanes? Sometimes it's important. Many times it's not important. But you have to go to the scene. It's malpractice for an attorney trying a driving under the influence case not to go to the scene, be totally familiar with the geography. Well, likewise, when an individual is representing himself, he is acting as his own attorney. He's pro per. And if he has not taken the care to go back to the scene and look at it, analyze it, measure it, clock it, just like the transaction occurred when he was pulled over.
Defendants who come into court with it in mind that the judge doesn't know what happened out there and needs to have it all explained to him and come prepared to do so are defendants that stand a much better chance of winning their case. Specifically, people who come to court with witnesses, diagrams, and best of all, photographs to help illustrate for the judge the location of where they were arrested, what it looked like, and to help the judge have a clear picture of exactly what happened, are people that stand a much better chance of success.
If you come into court and a judge seeing that you have taken the care, you've taken a day off from work, you've gone through the 2 court appearances it requires to get to court, so there's a time expenditure you've put. In addition to that, you've gone to the scene, you've diagrammed the scene, you've got it all completely measured, you're very set in your facts, you've taken photographs. Well, that greatly enhances the individual, in addition to helping him be prepared, it greatly enhances his credibility. Because now we have a judge looking at the individual saying, hey, you know, this guy really feels that he is innocent. A guilty person wouldn't go to all of this trouble to try and enlighten me on the actual facts of this case.
We don't have a lie detector machine here, all right? It's all up to you on how you want to plead. If you don't think you're guilty for whatever reason, be it you couldn't read the sign, you didn't see the sign, you just didn't do it, come up here and plead not guilty, all right? Like I said, it is more your explanation which is going to determine your guilt or innocence than how you plead.
I would say that the general public is very intimidated by the court system. I would consider myself, before I went to law school, before I went to college, to have been an average individual. I was so intimidated by the court system, I used to put on a suit to go down and pay a traffic ticket. And I would think that I was probably like a lot of people are right now. These judges in traffic court most of them are pretty reasonable individuals. They're just like you. They've got traffic tickets, probably not since they've been a judge, but they've had some of the same experiences when they were growing up. In order to alleviate that intimidation, it shouldn't be that intimidating a factor. Our courts are very fair, are usually very fair. If the person, prior to contesting his traffic ticket, would familiarize himself with the environment of the courthouse, he would be a whole lot less intimidated and better able to represent himself.
You and each of you do solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give and the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please be seated and come to order.
Good afternoon.
Going to court a day or two ahead of time, finding out what it's all about. Just seeing for yourself that the judge isn't going to call you a liar. He's not going to get antagonized because you come in and contest a traffic ticket. He's not going to feel that this is any kind of attack on law enforcement. you're going to be treated very dignified yourself. And you'll lose a lot of the intimidation if you just observe traffic court for a while.
Once you get there, well, before you get there, what should you do? One thing you ought to do is you ought to rehearse what you're going to say. We ought to rehearse them with people that you think would be able to listen attentively and give you their response. And what you want to tell them is, I want you to tell me whether if what I'm saying is understandable to you. Do you have any questions about it? Because what you want to do is, in a very brief amount of time, because you only got a few minutes, communicate with the judge what happened that establishes your innocence. If you fumble, if you back up and start over and get all confused, you've lost.
Officer write it down 21:30 on my ticket, and her ticket put it 18:30.
So what? To make a U-turn or not?
No, the timing that was the timing that was same timing. The officer.
So what? What's it gonna do with?
There was 3 hours different on.
So what? Did you make the U-turn or not, sir? The law says you can't make a U-turn in a business district, okay?
I would like to go to traffic school because I don't see, I cannot explain it in here in this court. You're not going to take my word.
I don't care if the citation's got the wrong
time.
Timing. Sir, it's my turn to talk, all right?
Okay.
Just like in any other argument, if you want to win the argument, you let the other person stop talking before you start responding. And then when he's listening, or she's listening, because she's run out of gas talking to you, you have an opportunity to calmly explain your side of the story.
I'm concerned with the violation of the law.
Okay.
The law is whether or not you made a U-turn. That's what you're here for. Making a U-turn in a business district, nothing else.
Okay, there was a parking lot in the left. Okay, if you... Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is a court of law.
Okay.
Now, we come here to fight our traffic tickets when we try to do things, we believe in fairness,
Sure.
all right?
Sure.
We do things a certain way. If you don't have any respect for the court, then we'll show you the same no respect. Now, I listen to you, and you listen to me. All right? When I'm finished, you'll talk, and vice versa. Is that fair enough?
Sure.
From your own experiences, you can pick up when they're telling the truth or trying to con you, which happens all the time. And we have a certain standard, it's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's what it comes down to. And if we have doubts, and credibility is one of the issues, too. But we don't call people liars, though. And I won't let anybody in a trial call an officer a liar, because that's not what it's about. I want to hear the facts of the certain case, because you go back and forth, like a spitting contest or something.
In any case, the bench officer hearing a traffic matter uses the concept of a reasonable doubt, and that simply means whether he is or is not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the facts stated in the citation as written by the officer are true. Now, he may not be convinced of that because of the facts as presented by the person who received the citation. In fact, he doesn't even need a reason to find a reasonable doubt. He simply can say at the end of a case, I am not convinced. He need not have a reason that these things occurred. And that's the yardstick that's applied in each citation.
Although there probably are some bad judges, most judges sincerely want to be fair. They sincerely want to do justice. They do not want to find a person guilty of an infraction, which is all a traffic ticket is in most instances, if that person is not guilty.
I approached the parking lot after going around the block and looking for a parking space, Your Honor.
Yeah.
And the attendant motioned to me that he was moving the cars. It was a matter of 2 minutes at the longest.
Keeping in mind that you want to present yourself to be as reasonable a human being as walks the face of the earth, you don't want to present to the judge any kind of comment that makes him feel embarrassed for the police officer or feel like defending the police officer or in any way that you are attacking the police officer, either the police officer himself as a person or his credibility or his profession or his judgment. What you want to do is only provide the court with an explanation of how the officer made a mistake. As I've mentioned before, don't get into a credibility contest with that police officer because the judge is not going to give you the advantage of the doubt. Don't attack the person of the police officer. That's going to be perceived by the judge to be a personal attack. It's going to do you harm, not good. It really gets down to keeping in mind the #1 principle, which is reasonableness.
Your Honor, he came up, rode by, he came up to me and said the lot is full. And I told him that the attendant was moving the cars. And then he went away and came back a half a minute later and says, I'm going to give you a ticket.
The officer is a real good guy. I'm surprised he wrote you the citation. I'm going to dismiss it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Go in and sit in on the judge as he tries other traffic tickets. Find out how he reacts. If a witness says something or makes a certain mistake, find out how the judge reacts to that type of mistake. Understand the individual that you're going to put your case in front of, so that you don't make the same mistakes that some of these other individuals made, or maybe you can do the same thing that a previously successful litigant has done in this case. The most important thing in trying a traffic ticket is the judge.
Because I know it turned red and the tail of my car was in, after I was finishing my turn, it turned red, but I had approached the turn when it was yellow. I'm so sure of that. No doubt about it.
However, the court is going to find you guilty and is going to impose a fine of $35 plus penalty assessment for a total fine of $63. As you have posted bail in that amount, the bail will stand for the fine.
But I don't understand. That should be illegal to be able to make a judgment like that.
There's another percentage win factor that happens, and this really doesn't pertain to the merits of the case, but I would say that 25% of all traffic tickets set for trial are dismissed because the police officer doesn't show up.
Mr. Manassan, please come forward. Based on a lack of prosecution, the citation against you is dismissed. Please see the clerk about getting a bail refund. Thank you for coming in today. Officers Hedges or Allen? Mr. Hebert, can you please come forward?
The judge wants to do what's right. He wants to only have those people penalized who deserve it.
We haven't heard from Hedges or Allen. Mr. Hebert, based on a lack of prosecution, the citation against you is dismissed.
So if you present yourself to be reasonable and you create in the minds of the judge a reasonable doubt, more than a reasonable doubt, but at least a reasonable doubt as to whether you did or did not commit the violation. And most importantly, if you convince the judge that you believe that you did not commit the violation, and he believes in your credibility, that is the best chance you've got of winning that traffic ticket.
The moving violation against you is dismissed. Thank you for coming in today. Please see the clerk.